Welcome back to the deep dive. If you play club tournaments, say on ClubGG or PokerBros, probably the most annoying part is just the waiting, right? Between hands.
Oh, absolutely. It can drag.
Exactly. But today we're diving into a format that just throws all that waiting out the window. Fast fold tournaments.
The speed demons of poker.
Yeah, sometimes called fold and go or quick fold. Basically, the moment you fold, boom, you're at a new table, new players, new hand, instantly.
Which sounds great for action, but it completely flips traditional tournament strategy on its head.
How so? What's the core shift?
Well, think about regular MTTS multi-table tournaments. A huge part of your edge comes from watching people, right? Building reads, figuring out who's tight, who's aggressive, who bluffs too much.
The observation is key.
Exactly. Fast fold just removes that completely. You might see, what, 2-3 times more hands per hour? But you're constantly facing strangers.
So no time to build those reads.
None. Which means your strategy can't rely on exploiting specific people. It has to shift towards a more mathematically sound, efficient approach. Think GTO game theory optimal as your baseline.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. We need to figure out the right mix of GTO principles and maybe some broad exploitative adjustments to really crush these high-volume games, from pre-flop all the way to the final table.
Let's get into it. The core challenge is adapting to that constant rotation of opponents.
Right. So beyond just playing more hands faster, what's the single biggest strategic change that comes from always facing unknowns?
It really is the death of the specific read, like I mentioned. In a normal tournament, maybe you see someone 3-bet light twice in an orbit. You remember that. You adjust.
Right, you tighten up against them.
Yeah. In fast fold, that player's gone the next hand. Poof! You're always playing against like the average tendency of the entire player pool in that club or on that app, not against individuals.
Okay, but if we default to playing GTO, which is supposed to be unexploitable, how does this fast fold structure actually create spots where we can exploit the average player?
Great question. It comes down to one massive factor: fold equity. It's hugely inflated in these games.
Meaning people fold more often than they should.
Way more often. Think about the psychology. People play fast fold because they want action. They want speed. They get dealt 7-4 offsuit in the big blind-facing arrays.
They just click fold to get the next hand faster.
Exactly. They over-prioritize speed and getting a new hand over defending marginally profitable spots. So this human tendency to rush creates enormous fold equity.
Which means light 3-betting, stealing blinds.
Bingo.
Okay.
All that pre-flop aggression becomes much more profitable. You're basically getting paid to be aggressive because people are so willing to just give up their blinds or fold to a 3-bet to keep the game moving. You accumulate chips just by sheer pressure.
So the early and middle stages feel much more aggressive then. Lots of stealing and re-stealing.
They should be, if you're playing optimally. And this focus on pre-flop also simplifies post-flop. If you can't build reads, complex post-flop plays become really dangerous.
Right, you mentioned avoiding fancy play syndrome, or FPS. No elaborate multi-street bluffs.
Definitely not recommended.
Yeah.
How can you run a sophisticated bluff line over 3 streets when you have zero history with the person? You don't know if they're sticky, if they're a calling station, if they fold to pressure.
So post-flop becomes more about, what, position, board texture?
Pretty much. Keep it simple. Play strong hands fast, rely on your position, understand how the board hits typical ranges, and try to avoid getting into really tricky marginal spots out of position. Math over mind games, essentially.
And I guess that faster pace means you hit that push-fold stage, under 20 big blinds, a lot quicker, too.
Much quicker. Seeing 3 times the hands means the blinds come around relentlessly. You can't just wait for premium hands. You need to build a stack efficiently right from the start, which brings us back to pre-flop.
Okay, so pre-flop is where the edge really lies because mistakes get amplified so much faster.
It's paramount. Every little pre-flop leak opening too tight from the button, defending blinds too wide, it costs you way more chips per hour in this format. Efficiency starts before the flop.
All right, let's nail down some core principles for everyone listening. First one, positional aggression. We know, okay, early position, under the gun, got to keep it tight. Premiums only, right? Like 10s plus, ace-king, ace-queen, maybe ace-jack suited.
Absolute standard. Nothing fancy there.
But where does it pivot? Late position cutoff button. How wide are we really talking? Because opening something like, 7-6 suited or queen 10 off seems risky against unknowns. Aren't we just lighting chips on fire sometimes?
That's the mental hurdle, but the math supports it because of that massive fold equity we keep talking about. From the cutoff, and especially the button, Your opening range needs to expand dramatically compared to a standard MTT.
Even with hands that are kind of marginal post-flop.
Even with those, yes, because the immediate profit from the blinds folding so often outweighs the times you get called and have to play post-flop with a slightly weaker hand. You open 7-6 suited on the button precisely because the blinds are itching to fold.
Got it. So that ties into principle number 2, which
Right.
sounds like attack the blinds ruthlessly.
You have to. The sources are really clear on this. Players in the blinds, big blind especially, they just don't have the incentive to defend wide. Folding gets them back to the fun part, seeing new cards. You punish that.
So how do we flip that? When we're in the blinds facing a leap position raise, I know over-defending the big blind is a leak even normally.
It's a catastrophe here. Principle 3,
Huh.
tighten up your blind defense. Seriously, just because someone raises from the button doesn't mean you have to defend your queen 5 offsuit.
Why is it so bad here?
Because you're out of position with a mediocre hand against a range you can't possibly know, belonging to a player you don't know. It's just burning money post-flop. Be much more selective. Defend with hands that play well-suited broadways, medium pairs, maybe some ace-x suited, but ditch the junk. Conservatism pays off when defending blinds here.
Makes sense. And the last pre-flop rule, simple but crucial, avoid limping.
Oh God, yes. Limping is just bad. It's generally bad in modern poker anyway, but in fast fold, it's like setting your chips on fire. It screens weakness, invites pressure, and kills efficiency. Just raise or fold. Keep it clean.
Okay, but this must change based on stack size, right? What if you're deep, say 50 to 100 big blinds?
Good point. When you're deep, you have room to maneuver. This is where polarized 3-betting comes in.
Polarized. Remind us what that means in practice.
It means your 3-betting range isn't just your absolute monsters like aces, kings, queens, ace-king. You mix in some carefully selected bluffs too.
Like what kind of bluffs?
Hands that have good blocking potential and can make strong hands post-flop if called. Think ace-5 suited, maybe king-5 suited sometimes. The ace or king blocks some of their premium calling hands, and the suitedness gives you backdoor flush potential. You're balancing your strong value with these effective bluffs.
Gotcha. Value in bluffs, not just value. And then when you inevitably slide down to, say, under 20 big blinds, short stack territory.
Game changes completely. No more fancy plays, no more polarized ranges. You switch immediately to a strict push-fold strategy.
Just shove or fold.
Pretty much. You need to know your range is cold. When it folds to you in late position with 15 big blinds, you need to know if ace-9 offsuit is a shove, if king-jack suited is a shove. There's no time to wait for aces. You got to find profitable spots to get it all in. Use push-hole charts or calculators.
Right, because waiting just lets the blinds eat you alive even faster in this format. A common mistake must be people waiting too long for those premiums, underestimating how much fold equity they have, even with a short stack.
Huge mistake. They bleed chips, waiting for the perfect hand that might never come. Okay, so let's shift gears. Phase 3, post-flop efficiency. We know it needs to be simpler. What's the C-betting plan against this sea of unknowns?
C betting. Continuation betting for anyone newer. Betting after you were the pre-flop raiser.
Exactly. The key is position. When you raise pre-flop and you're in position post-flop, you should C-bet quite often, especially on dry, uncoordinated boards. Think like ace-7-2 rainbow.
And the bet size.
Keep it small, usually around 13 of the pot. This puts pressure on all their air and weak hands that just want to fold, but it doesn't risk too many chips when you're bluffing. It's a figured pressure.
Okay, and when you're out of position, say you raised under the gun and the button called.
Much trickier. You have to be way more selective. Check more often. Generally, only C-bet when the board strongly favors your range, or when you have a very strong hand or a strong draw yourself. C-betting out of position without a good reason is just asking for trouble against unknowns.
Now, we said we can't exploit individuals, but you mentioned exploiting population tendencies. What are the big mistakes the average player makes in these fast fold games that we can target?
Yeah, there are definitely patterns. 3 big ones stand out from the sources. Number 1, they simply overfold in marginal spots, pre-flop and post-flop.
We talked about the pre-flop part attacking blinds. How does it show up post-flop?
They just don't like calling bets without strong hands, phasing a C-bet, phasing a turn bet. If they don't have a good pair or a strong draw, they often just give up too easily because, again, clicking fold is easy and gets them a new hand.
So the exploit there is just more aggression, more bluffing.
Well, yes, but calculated aggression. Thin value betting becomes better too because they might call one street with weaker pairs. But yeah, bluffing in good spots like c-betting those dry boards is more effective. Stealing pots pre-flop with wider ranges from late position, like you said, opening that queen-9 suited or ace-5 off from the button because you expect folds maybe 60% of the time just from the raise itself.
Okay, exploiting the general desire to fold, what's tendency number 2?
Number 2, they often over-c-bet on dry boards themselves. It's like autopilot.
Ah, right. They raise pre-flop, flop comes king 7 deuce rainbow, and they just reflexively bet 13 pot because that's what you do.
Exactly. They do it with their entire range sometimes, whether they hit the king or have ace high or complete air.
So how do we exploit that robot c-bet?
By floating sometimes.
Yeah.
If the board is dry and they make that small, predictable c-bet, you can call in position with hands that have some potential, maybe a medium pair like 8s or 9s, or even a backdoor draw like queen-jack suited.
And the plan is?
See the turn. If they check the turn, which they often will if they were just auto c-betting air on the flop, their range is now capped.
Yeah.
They likely don't have the king. That's when you bet. You take the pot away because you correctly identified their c-bet was weak and automatic.
Yeah.
You turn their predictability against them.
Clever. Okay, tendency 3.
Weak blind defense. We kind of covered this, but it's worth hammering home. They just fold too much from the big blind especially.
And the specific exploit, beyond just raising wide.
Consider using slightly larger open raise sizes from late position. Instead of just min-raising 2x, maybe go 2.5x or even 3x sometimes. This puts maximum pressure on their reluctance to defend, maximizing your fold equity. Don't get fancy trying to induce calls with tiny raises. Just apply pressure.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground. Let's move towards the end game, phase 4. Stack management and the all-important final table. Early on, the goal is using fold equity value betting. What about avoiding slow playing? Seems dangerous here.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
You almost never want to slow play a big hand in fast fold unless you have the stone cold nuts on a super dry board.
Right.
Why? Because you don't know your opponent. You can't build a dynamic to trap them over multiple streets.
So just bet your strong hands for value.
Yes. Bet them relatively hard and fast to get value from worse hands that might call 1 or 2 streets. Thin value betting is key betting with hands like top pair, decent kicker, even if you're not sure you're ahead, because the population calls with worse often enough. Get the money in while you likely have the best hand.
And if we manage to build a big stack, how do we protect it without becoming too passive? The sources warn about leveling. What's that?
Leveling is basically getting into thinking games like, okay, he knows that I know that he knows. It's trying to outthink your opponent based on perceived reads or history.
Which we don't have here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So trying to run complex bluffs or make hero calls based on some perceived metagame against an anonymous opponent is usually just leveling yourself, outsmarting yourself into making a bad play.
So with a big stack, play solid, straightforward poker.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Be the hammer. Use your stack to pressure opponents, especially at the final table, but don't get into unnecessary complex mind games.
Yeah.
Stick to high equity, fundamentally sound plays.
All right, the final table. This is where things get really intense, especially with money on the line. You mentioned pressure, but the dynamic shifts because of ICM, right? The independent chip model.
Hugely. ICM is everything at the final table. It's a mathematical model that assigns a real money dollar value to your chip stack based on the payout structure. Crucially, it shows that losing chips is often more costly in terms of dollar EV, expected value, than gaining the same number of chips.
Because busting out means you get $0 more, but surviving might guarantee a pay jump.
Precisely. Survival has direct monetary value. This completely changes optimal strategy compared to just playing for chips.
Okay, so how does this affect different stack sizes at a fast fold final table? Let's start with the middle stacks, maybe 3rd to 6th and chips. They seem trapped.
They are incredibly trapped. They're often described as being ICM handcuffed. They have medium stacks, so they can't really bully the short stacks without risk, and they desperately want to avoid clashing with the big stacks. Because if a middle stack tangles with a big stack and loses, they could potentially drop several payout spots. Going from a likely $500 payout to maybe $100 if they bust is a massive hit to their dollar EV. So they're forced to play extremely cautiously, folding many hands they might normally play just to ladder up the payouts.
So for them, sometimes folding and waiting is the right play.
Often, yes. Avoiding marginal confrontations that risk their tournament life is paramount for middle stacks trying to secure higher payouts.
Okay, now the flip side, the big stacks. What's their job?
Their job is to abuse this ICM pressure. They should be raising relentlessly, especially into the middle stacks who are handcuffed and less likely to play back without premium hands. They can steal blinds and small pots with near impunity sometimes, leveraging their chip lead to exploit the ICM fears of others.
And finally, the poor short stacks under, say, 15 big blinds. What's their plan? Just pray for aces.
No praying. That's the worst thing they can do. Short stacks need to be aggressive, but it has to be calculated aggression based on push-fold charts that account for ICM.
So finding the right spots to shove all in.
Exactly. Look for spots to re-shove over late position opens, or open shove themselves when folded too. Their goal isn't really subtle play anymore. It's finding profitable opportunities to double up or go home. They need to know their shoving ranges precisely. Waiting passively just guarantees the blinds and antes will finish them off.
Wow. Okay. So wrapping this all up for our deep dive on fast fold club tournaments. It really sounds like success boils down to, well, discipline, rigid discipline.
That's a huge part of it. Discipline. Focusing on GTO-based pre-flop play, understanding positional advantages, and adapting your strategy instantly based on stack depth and position, not on who you think your opponent is.
And using the right tools seems essential too.
Absolutely critical. The sources consistently recommend study tools. You really need GTO solvers, things like GTO Wizard, PioSolver, to drill those fundamentally sound pre-flop ranges into your brain. And for the end game, push-fold calculators that incorporate ICM like IC Mysore or Hold'em Resources Calculator, HRC, are non-negotiable for mastering those final table shove fold decisions.
So it's about building that efficient, almost robotic foundation.
It really is. Efficiency is the name of the game. You gain your edge not through brilliant reads, but through relentlessly executing a mathematically superior strategy slightly better than the average opponent, hand after hand after hand.
It almost sounds like the format forces you to become the perfect poker machine.
In a way, yeah. Which leads to a pretty interesting final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If this fast fold format deliberately removed the human element, the tells, the table dynamics, the history and rewards, constant near-perfect mathematical execution,
Yeah.
how much does that traditional poker feel or intuition we always talk about actually matter here? Is the edge found purely in flawless execution of a solved strategy, or is there still room for something more?